It was a bright and sunny day in a small town in Vancouver. The birds were singing and children were running to get some ice cream from the ice cream truck. People were stopping to chat with others or smell the flowers lingering outside the floral shop. Out of all the many different shops in this small town, the most well-known one was the Hemlock Butcher Shop. The family who owned the shop was really pleasant with their customers and rarely had any problems with anybody. After 46 years, the family retired and passed down the shop to their son Seth and his wife Rita. Business was going as usual that day, and Seth handed over the package of meat to his latest customer. "Here you go, Miss Melville," Seth smiled, placing the package on the counter. "Thank you, Seth. Such a sweet boy," the middle-aged woman replied with a smile. "So where is your wife? Hope she's getting her daily rest. Must be impossible for her being a restless one and all," she giggled. "I'm here, and don't worry, Miss Melville. I just gotten up from my nap," Rita said, coming down the stairs holding her 6-month-old pregnant belly. "Nice to see you again, Rita," Miss Melville smiled. The conversation was then pulled literally into a screeching halt when a black and green sports car zoomed down the street and started doing donuts in the cul-de-sac. All of this was happening while the car's driver was cheering at the top of his lungs with his girlfriend giggling in the passenger seat as they drove off. Miss Melville frowned, looking out the window, and scrunched up her nose in disgust. Oh, that obnoxious new couple that just moved in. Tripp and his girlfriend Paula. Seth sighed as he leaned onto the counter a bit. "Well, I guess now we have to look at least 4 times across the street instead of 2 whenever we hear that engine coming near," he said, trying to break the tension. Miss Melville smiled at the little joke uttered by the young man. Anywho, did you two find out if the little one is going to be a boy or a girl?" Miss Melville asked, changing the subject immediately. The couple looked at each other and smiled as they looked over to her. "We decided to keep the baby's gender a secret until he or she is born. We even have names whether it's a boy or girl, or even multiples for that reason." Seth smiled, rubbing Rita's belly. Miss Melville smiled at the happy couple. "Oh, how lovely. A surprise is much more fun than knowing." Little did they know, their little surprise would last forever. Later on that night, when everyone had packed up their shop goods inside and the townspeople had headed asleep, Seth and Rita had already fallen into dreamland, and it was about 3:27 in the morning. Rita made faces in her sleep and tossed and turned as the baby moved and kicked uncontrollably. She yawned as she woke up and rubbed her belly, but that didn't help. She sighed, and a small smile plastered her face as she got up and went down to the sink, located by the front counter, to get a glass of water. She froze in place as she heard the familiar sound of the revving sports car and sounds of Tripp and Paula's drunk laughing. She sighed and rolled her eyes as she drank her water and put the cup into the sink. It was then she heard a scream and saw a light flashing towards the window. She walked up toward the front of the counter and tried to peek out the window from a distance until she went wide-eyed when the lights got brighter and brighter. Seth woke up with a startle when he heard a loud crash coming from downstairs. He immediately got out of bed and ran down to the shop. He froze in place and shuddered as he observed the sight. Tripp's green and black sports car had crashed in through the front of the giant window placed in front of the shop. He saw Tripp and Paula bailing the scene and then saw Rita, slightly pinned between the car and the counter, blood pouring from her mouth onto the hood of the car. No, Seth muttered as tears filled his eyes, and he went over to his injured wife. He held her hand and gasped when he saw she was still breathing and her eyes were still open. Rita, don't worry, the ambulances are almost here. You and the baby will be just fine," he said, breaking into tears and realizing that the baby surely didn't survive the impact. The sound of multiple sirens and lights soon reached closer and closer to the scene. Rita ended up surviving the crash, but in order for her life to be saved, her womb had to be removed along with the unborn child. Seth peeked into the hospital room, seeing Rita sitting on the bed expressionless but with tears rolling down her cheeks. Seth closed the door and sat her in between his legs as he sat on the bed. Why did this happen? For years we've tried to have a child, and the one chance we get, our baby is taken away from us, Rita muttered. And I can't believe those two just ran off, Seth mumbled. A sick, twisted smile plastered Rita's pale skin as she started giggling. Humans are truly cruel creatures. So many types of horrible people. Cheaters, con artists, whores, liars. So many people that need to know the power of what justice can bring. Seth grinned and chuckled wickedly as well, kissing her head. I agree. And I know our first victim. No, customer, he said. The night of Rita's release, they already formed a plan to settle the fate of Tripp and Paula. Tripp wobbled out of a bar located on the outskirts of town. Paula was back over at their little hideout they found after the accident. Rita walked around the corner of the bar in her black high heels, spiked out hair, and tight black dress. Tripp grinned and pulled her close to him when she walked by. Hey girl, why don't you and me go back to my place and have some fun? The drunk man slurred. Rita flirted back and let out a tiny giggle. I can see a hickey on your neck, which means you most likely have a girlfriend, she grinned. Ah, she can handle another little guest, he purred, pulling her closer. A hand holding a cloth then shot out from the corner of the bar nearest to Tripp and covered his nose and mouth. Seth emerged from the shadows and put Tripp into a headlock and pressed the cloth coaxed in chloroform into Tripp's nose and mouth. Tripp, struggling, soon halted to a stop as his body gave in to the chemicals, passing him out in a matter of seconds. Tripp groaned as he started gaining consciousness. First thing he notices was Paula next to him with her hands and feet wrapped together in duct tape, as well as her mouth covered as well as she was crying. He then noticed he was tied and gagged as well, and that they were both on a conveyor belt leading to a huge meat grinder. He looked over when he heard footsteps approaching, and seeing Seth and Rita walk into the room, both wearing their uniforms and goggles, and both with creepy grins stitched into their faces. Tripp and Paula flinched and whimpered a bit in pain as Rita ripped the tape away from their mouths. Seth stood by the control panel ready to push the button to start the machine until Paula started pleading out to them. Please, I beg of you. Please let me live. I'm 4 months pregnant. I have been found out recently. You wouldn't kill an unborn child, would you? Rita went up to her and grabbed her chin, forcing Paula to look at her. No, but you have. She smirked as she cut open her stomach. Tripp cried out to his girlfriend that was now gasping for air and screaming in pain as Rita reached into her stomach, moving her hand around. Well, look at that. I can't seem to feel a baby in that dried up cavern of yours you call a womb. You don't deserve to have kids, let alone live, she said, whispering her last sentence as Paula took her final breath. Rita grinned as she licked the blood off her fingers while she walked over to Seth. He grinned as he pressed the button to the machine and the conveyor belt started dragging and cursing Tripp and Paula's lifeless body to the giant meat grinders. Soon the room filled with the sound of Tripp's screams, crunching bones, and mechanic clacking. Then it went silent. It was over. Cops were still on the search for Tripp and Paula, unaware of the two's demise. Miss Melville smiled as Seth handed over her order of burger meat, and with a slight psychotic joy in his voice, he smirked. Here you go, Miss Melville. It was freshly grounded up last night.